Now it's time for a display update for the 1986 Akai S900 MIDI digital sampler. With adequate ambient lighting, the original LCD display with fading aqua blue backlight can be usable, but contrast separating characters on screen from the background is far from ideal with this old technology. In complete darkness, the original backlight overpowers any information on the LCD, making it a squint fest for eyes older than 40. Under the hood, there are 3 screws securing the screen, a 14-pin side connector, and a 2-wire lead that connects to an inverter board powering the antiquated backlight, which will inevitably fail. A bunch of screen replacements exist for the Akai and the S950, which is just an updated S900. I chose a custom design screen that was not made in China. As such, it was not the cheapest option, but in my opinion, the best fit and finish to match the S900. LuxMuzik, based out of the UK, has a plethora of displays for many 80s, 90s synthesizers and processors, including my S900 sampler. Links to the eBay listing are in the description below. The passive matrix vertical alignment, or PMVA LED backlight display I chose, is intended to be viewed head-on or from a 12 o'clock position. It plugs into the 14-pin display connector and requires no soldering to install. On the back of the display, a 2-wire lead terminates into a trimmer screw for fine-tuning of backlight brightness. And there's no need to keep the inverter board once the PMVA LED screen is installed. Beyond the benefit of solderless installation or relying on inverter technology for backlight, the new PMVA screen has a contrast ratio of 1,000 to 1, which means the black background is adjustable to make the characters on screen pop. There's also no ghosting of characters when scrolling or changing pages. Now I already have the top cover off, but you can see how it's removed in part 1 with the Gotek floppy emulator installation. Okay, dive right in by removing the panel underneath the screen. This is necessary to access the inverter board should you wish to take that out completely like I did. Undo the 2 screws holding the inverter in place and remove the now useless board from the sampler. Or you could leave it in place and cut the leads to the original LCD display. On to the main event. 3 screws are undone to remove the LCD from the bracket. The 14-pin connector on the left side pulls away with ease, and the 2-wire lead to the inverter can be severed without a care. Temporarily, for a quick test, the display can be bolted to the bracket with the 3 screws just removed in the last step. Move the backlight trim screw terminal to the front and off to the side. Attach the 14-pin connector to the display. Once the S900 powers up, the LED display speaks for itself. Much brighter and much clearer than the old screen could ever hope to be. With the original display, I had to crank the contrast knob on the sampler to see anything at all, so with the new LED display, the contrast knob should be set to the midway position as instructed by the manufacturer. The black background is as dark as midnight, and the LED characters throw crisp light from the screen. And all this without the buzzy little inverter from the 1980s. Since the new display connects and performs as expected, the front panel underneath the screen can be put back into place now that the inverter is no longer a concern for this project. There are 7 screws in total that lock the front panel into place. The backlight was fine-tuned after emailing photos of my installation results to LuxMuzik. I was advised to increase the brightness ever so slightly. Very little adjustment was needed. That's how well calibrated this device was when it was shipped to me. Now that we know everything works as expected, the S900 gets powered down. It's necessary to permanently mount the screen behind the bracket to accommodate the slightly deeper bezel on the display. This way, there is no interference when remounting the Akai faceplate. Once the 3 screws and 14-pin connector are undone, the screen can be maneuvered behind the bracket holes. The 14-pin connector is then reattached, and 3 included cable zip ties are used to secure the screen to the mounting bracket on the sampler. The key here is to be sure the screen is level and immovable so that the screen looks just like it did when the screws kept the display in place in the prior step. Cable ties can be pulled tight with pliers and the excess line severed with sharp snips for a clean cut. And just for good measure, I wipe dust and fingerprints from the inside and outside of the faceplate window. There are 3 spacers that rest between the faceplate and the chassis rails on the top side only, and the faceplate slides over the chassis rails with care so that the front panel buttons don't get pinched. 3 screws are tightened on the left side, the center, and the right side. Turning over the sampler, 3 screws follow suit on the underside of the faceplate. Flipping the S900 upright, let's check how the display bezel and faceplate window line up. Now, I'm filming under very bright video lights, and the new LED display is easily read. All characters are on screen, and nothing's hiding behind the bezel. If this technology existed back in '86, I'm sure Akai would have contracted LuxMuzik to build and supply these displays for Akai's then flagship sampler. I couldn't be happier with my purchase or more satisfied with the ease of installation. The back cover slides on, a screw on the back lid is locked down, 2 screws on each side panel are secured, and finally 4 screws on each heavy-duty rack ear are reattached so this vintage behemoth can go back into the rack. With everything hooked up and powered on, immediately this machine becomes more of a joy to use. So much frustration has been eliminated now that I can see the screen clearly and with biting contrast in broad daylight. And I could see writing and recording music by the amber glow of the display when the lights are low. Or off, whichever. Too bad there isn't an LED upgrade for the push buttons.